The Crying Game, Part 2. Having ascertained that the commission of tears arising from physical and/or emotional hurt resulted in a sympathetic reaction from certain people, I committed this to memory. I have rarely encountered much physical pain as an adult, enjoying excellent health and ensuring that I always get my retaliation first, so that my enemies are the ones who experience physical pain rather than me. The early conditioning that I have been subjected to, as I now understand, appears to have resulted in me being impervious to many emotional injuries that others suffer from. Even the horrendous sensations which arise from my wounding as a consequence of criticism does not cause the tears to fall. Instead, I must focus on repairing the wound through retreat or the instigation of my fury in order to gather fuel. The attention this requires means that I do not suffer the immediate reaction of becoming upset, not even for myself. I must look to feign upset in order to attract the required sympathy, and in doing so, I use that issued sympathy in order to bring about the control I require over the subject. Nevertheless, the acquisition of sympathy is not something that I, as a greater, particularly engage in, but rather this is very much the preserve of the mid-range narcissist. My tuition in the art and use of crying later embraced a different catalyst, and one which has served to drive me ever onwards and upwards. I have many gifts, and of those, the one that was cherished most by my father was my academic ability. As I mentioned in Part 1, my father was a very intelligent man, well-read, and with an interest in the world at large, something which he aimed to bestow on all of his offspring. This served him well in both his careers of commerce and then academia. He was the steady hand at the tiller of our academic progress, and he sought to steer a path through the choppy waters of my mother's ambitions for us, our own desires, and what he felt would serve us best. The three, as you might expect, were not always compatible. I excelled at school, which naturally resulted in my progression to sixth form college, and I was always destined for university. Naturally, it was the most prestigious in this country that I was directed towards, and I achieved admission, whereupon in such a fertile environment, I began to flex my tendrils as I embraced my dark art. But those are tales for other times. Alongside this, I flourished in my chosen discipline, and eventually I graduated with a double first. It was this achievement which Dr. E honed in on in one of our discussions. So, a double first, quite the achievement, he remarked. I nodded. He was not wrong. What did your parents think about it? He asked. My friends, once they had their results, went racing away to telephone their parents to let them know the outcome. I didn't. Why? It had already been arranged that I was meeting my parents for dinner that evening, and I would tell them my degree result once we ordered food. What did you think of that arrangement? Asked the good doctor. Weren't you keen to tell your parents sooner of your success? I suppose so, but I knew there was little point. Even if I had tried to telephone them, nobody would have answered. My mother would have deliberately absented the house, so I could not reach them, so as to avoid spoiling the anticipation at dinner. So, this arrangement was at your mother's behest? He asked. Of course. Who else? If I achieved the expected outcome, the evening would pass pleasantly. If I did not, I would be subjected to a lengthy cross-examination, unable to avoid it by putting the telephone down. That is why she wanted me physically present. I see. It was fortuitous, then, that you achieved such an excellent result, he remarked. Fortune had nothing to do with it. This dinner was placed in the diary as soon as my mother knew when the examination results would be posted. In her mind, it was a further incentive for me to achieve what was expected of me. Dr. E nodded and made a note. How did the meal progress then? How did they react to news of your achievement? Once our orders had been placed and the waiter walked away, my mother turned to me and asked, Well? I responded with, I obtained a double first. And she answered by saying, As expected, I will make the call. And she then left the table to telephone the other family members to let them know, probably her brother first of all out of them all. No mention of well done or congratulations? Asked Dr. E. I shook my head. What about your father? He asked. My father waited until my mother was out of earshot, and he reached across and placed his hand on my arm and said, "Well done, HG. Very well done. That is a fantastic outcome. I know just how hard you have had to work for that result. It is a magnificent result, truly outstanding. I am so very proud of you, son. Very proud indeed." And then, as he said the word proud, his voice cracked, and I looked up into his eyes, and I could see that he was crying. I had never seen my father cry before, never. I had seen him concerned, downcast, worried, and so much more, but never the tears. His face was fixed with a huge smile, and he tried to speak again, but it appeared as if he was overcome with emotion, pride, I think. Pride for me, just me. I'd not seen anything like it before. "How did you feel about him showing such pride for you?" asked Dr. E. I was taken aback, but then I felt this surge through me, and it felt amazing. It was visceral and ever so powerful, and as I continued to look at him, the tears filling his eyes, and he kept nodding, his hand patted my arm. I can still picture it now. He wasn't able to speak, but the look on his face and that nodding told me that somehow he felt that the job was done. The mission had been accomplished, and he was proud of me for doing so. I have not forgotten that moment. "Why is that?" asked Dr. E. "Because the way I felt when I saw my father cry tears of presumably pride at my achievement made me want to see that again. The sense of power that he imbued in me, his praise, his pride, his adoration of my achievement was so edifying that he made me strive even harder. Oh, my mother thinks she is the driving force behind my success, and it would be wrong to say that she's not been. She has been a huge influence. But from that point onwards, my postgraduate achievement, my securing of employment and advancement through the hierarchy to where I am now, and also in terms of what the future may bring, has actually been driven by my father. I wanted to feel that power again. For that to happen, I wanted to see those tears of pride again. So I worked damn hard. I never knew that pride could make someone cry. I never knew that someone's proud tears could make me feel so powerful." "I see," said Dr. E. "Did you see those tears of pride again from your father?" I felt the first flicker of the ignition of my fury at this question. No. Once again, something special to me was taken from me.